Thank you. What beautiful music we have this morning. Wow, I could sit and listen to that for an hour, and that would be service right there. Thank you all. These people are absolutely incredible. I don't know if there was one song there that Shari put together. What's the name of it, Shari?
It's called
Higher Love. She didn't write it, but she arranged it, and I think it was beautifully done. She added the clarinet. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we're going to kind of wing it this morning. I got a message from Judy that she was not feeling well, and we talked for a few minutes, and she said, well, maybe Charles could get up and open up to discussion or something along this line for a platform this morning. And I thought for a minute, wait, I got something to say. What if I just share my incredible journey to Egypt? And she said, sure, go ahead. So this is going to be a little off kilter because I gave the slide. Shelby asked for the slide. She's actually the one that puts these into the presentation. Thank you, Shelby. And I have lots of pictures, but these are just generics, so you're going to have to use your imagination, or you can pull your phones out, and if I give you the name of the place, you can actually look it along with me as I tell you about the places I visited. There's two parts to this journey. There was a physical journey and there was a spiritual journey, so I'll go into all of that. But thank you for being here and spending these few moments with me. I really had a wonderful time. This was last year in February that I went to Egypt. So we start with the pyramids. The enigma on the earth, isn't it? It's one of the seven wonders is what they're called. And actually, this place has been on my mind for a very, very long time. I've wanted to go there since I can't remember when. But I actually went there physically a year ago. So here it goes. So like anybody who's paying attention, my trip to Egypt arose out of the longings of my heart created in my personal journey. For several years, the voice of Spirit kept sending me messages about Egypt. I remember a vision I had in meditation having to do with me in the ancient past having ties to the temple in Karnak on the Nile. It was called Thebes then, and the word Thebes was given. Anyway, and a general feeling of the need to go back to Egypt, although I had never been there in this lifetime. I accepted the invitation, leaving it up to the universe to provide the timing and the purpose, which happened in a very short window in late December of 2021. Since I've started my studies of the esoteric sciences, I had been looking at YouTube videos which could corroborate the information I was learning. I didn't want just one source. I wanted to have information from other people that were having the same experience. And one day I came across a podcast by a man his name is Aubrey Marcus. He was interviewing a young man from Argentina. His name is Matias de Stefano, who claims to have memories of his life in Atlantis, Egypt, and other places. The talk was called Our Nine-Dimensional Existence. Matias is a very remarkable person, having had a spiritual awakening at a very young age. And he's been delivering this message about all things spiritual since he was about 17 years of age. And he's just in his early 30s right now. I'm still not clear about all the details of his life, but what caught my attention were two things. First, he was speaking in the terms and language which were completely in line with my spiritual studies. And number two, at the end of the talk, Aubrey asked him if there was anything else he'd like to add. And it's here that Matias gave a pitch for his upcoming event in Egypt called Yo Soy, or I Am in English, on the date of 02/20/2022. You hear all those numbers? Okay, so Eureka, here it was. This was my answer I'd been looking for. As I only had a short period of time in order to make a working plan, including a week prior to the event to do some sightseeing, and become acclimated to the time zone, I scrambled to put it all together. As I would be traveling by myself, it took a little more money and strategizing, as my husband was not keen on the idea of traveling that far from home with the pandemic still a threat. I packed my small suitcase, always a good idea, carry on when you go abroad, secured my visa online, and even learned how to purchase a SIM card for my phone before leaving the airport. All was in play now, and I left the rest of this adventure up to source, as I still didn't fully realize why I was going there. I knew that I was going to join this group, led by Matthias, that had something to do with healing the planet energetically. I arrived in the evening on the following day and rode into the heart of the city in the Hotel Transport, which was a beat-up 1980 Toyota Corolla with a young man that didn't speak a lick of English. So we spoke mostly in sign language. So, okay then, I thought, let the adventure begin. I got to the hotel, which sits on a wide boulevard across the street from Tahrir Square in Cairo. This is the site of the uprising known as the Arab Spring. This was an event that brought about when people unhappy with the president at the time, especially a lot of young people, took to the streets, gathering at Tahrir Square to march and protest. Although a change did come in, notably the stepping down of the president, not all that was hoped for came to be, and not without a lot of bloodshed, unfortunately. A military junta was formed and took control of the government. Now their presence is seen all over the city, and especially around tourist sites, where now one has to walk through a metal detector to go inside many of the holy places. Also, what I noticed as I was touring these sites with my guide was the look on the faces of many of these military people. They looked at my guide with suspicion, asking him what his business was walking alone with a foreign woman. This is a Muslim country, remember that. Now, according to my guide, the country is in a deep depression economically. Before, they had plenty of food and money and a healthy economy. Now that is all gone. They have security, but not much quality of life. I looked out my balcony across at the park and the lights shining on the square, and I felt a sense of gratitude for my way of life in America. I saw the Egyptian Museum. Slide number 5, please. Yes, you're going to have to scroll through a little bit. Keep going. Not that one. One more. There it is. Okay. And it's unfortunate because the building is pink. I don't know if it's brick or granite. I don't know what it's made out of, but it's pink. And it was built in 1902. It's on the square right in the middle of town. And the middle of town, the Nile courses through the city and divides it into two. This is the main repository, or was the main repository, of thousands of years of antiquities, unearthed since the beginning of its opening. And so many millennia and so many conquerors, Alexander the Great, the Nubians from Africa, the Romans in the ancient days, the Byzantine Empire, the Persians, and finally the Muslims, and now the military. And that's Egypt's history. My plans for the week included a city tour and a cruise down the Nile. The hotel manager arranged for the city tour, which, surprise, surprise, included that same young man in his beat-up car from the night before. But we had an English-speaking guide, thank goodness. They took me to all the important historical sites in Cairo, including the Cairo Citadel, which is a medieval fortress that contains within it the Mosque of Muhammad Ali, a huge complex which overlooks the city, and it has these tall minarets. You can tell the mosques from usually a dome, and then these tall minarets that are on the sides. And if you all want to look in your phone, you're welcome to do that, because there'll be pictures in there of all these things I'm going to tell you about that are not on the slides. Then we went to a place called the Coptic Hanging Church, and this was originally built in the ancient fortress of Babylon in Old Cairo around the 4th century AD. It derives its name from its location, suspended above 2 Roman gate towers. Then to another church called the Bacchus Church, or Abu Sirga. This is the Coptic Cairo, or the Old Catholic Christian Cairo. It's one of the oldest churches in Egypt. It dates to the 4th century. It is traditionally believed to have been built above the cave where Joseph, Mary, and Jesus rested at the end of their journey into Egypt. The well they drank from is located inside the church and was originally near the cave where they stayed. The next stop was the National Museum, which opened partially in February of 2017. And it displays a collection of 50,000 artifacts, presenting the Egyptian civilization from prehistory to the present day. In fact, they're moving a lot of the artifacts from this museum into the new National Museum. And the most impressive exhibit in this museum is the display of fully intact mummies from the Pharaonic period, about 1550 BC, up to the time of the conquest of the Romans in 30 BC. It's a beautiful exhibit. You actually go down under the building into this dark corridor, and the only thing you're really seeing is the lights on the path and these mummies that are in glass cases, then they're lit from within. It's just a beautiful exhibit. Our last stop was at the Grand Bazaar. It's called the Khan el Khalil. It was built as a palace for the ruling Khan between the 10th and the 12th centuries. It's a fascinating souk, or bazaar, and it's home to lots and lots of little shops and restaurants. And as much as I enjoyed looking at all the beautiful things displayed, the shopkeepers, in their frantic need to make a sale, remember they're all starving, they draw you in physically if you even look at their wares. So I just made a habit of just walking by as quickly as I could, because they will literally grab you and bring you in to buy something. So one unmistakable thing about traveling outside the United States is the habits of drivers, which are so very different than what we're used to. I'm sure many of you have traveled outside the United States. When my husband and I went to Southeast Asia in 2019, we witnessed firsthand during the stops we made on our cruise, on our city tours that we took, that the drivers are all in a hurry and they all want the same position. And so they're jockeying in and around each other and through each other, and I don't know how they all make it, but somehow all this traffic ends up where it's going without anybody getting hurt. But I remember in those times when I got a little scared, I just kind of turned my head and said a little prayer, and Cairo was no exception. So getting back to the hotel in one piece was a relief. Okay, now slide 4. The next day, I flew to Luxor, which is down south, and it's a city on the Nile. There, I boarded a small cruise line for a trip down the river, starting in Luxor. Here I met my guide, and our first stop was the famous Valley of the Kings. This is a picture of that valley. It's quite a long ways up to this point, but there's a parking lot probably where this picture was taken. And as you walk up the wide boulevard, there are, if you can see like the little dark opening on the left, that's a tomb entrance. There are, this valley, first of all, is famous for the tomb of King Tutankhamun, which was discovered in 1922 by Howard Carter. The valley is known to contain 63 tombs. And I want you to think about this word tomb. Notice how the word sounds like the word womb. Not by chance, I'm sure. 63 tombs, 120, and the chambers range in size from a single pit to a complex tomb with over 120 chambers. It was the principal burying place of the major royal figures of the Egyptian New Kingdom, as well as a number of privileged nobles. The tombs are decorated with scenes from Egyptian mythology and give clues to the beliefs and funerary practices of the period. So when you go into the entrance, you're actually going down, and many of them have a central corridor, and then they might have a little room off to the side, but they are exquisitely decorated, many of them with the original colors and carvings from that time. If you look overhead, I noticed in all of the tombs, there were depictions of the night sky. Dark, dark blue with gold stars. Okay, where am I? Okay, so next stop, this is going to be slide 3. This is Karnak. Now, this is a temple complex. I want you to do this with me. I want you to raise your index finger. I want you to point on your body to your temple. Got it? Okay. This is a temple complex of Karnak. In other words, not just one temple, but the main temple is this. This is looking across the, it's an enclosure, it's a water enclosure. It's like a big swimming pool, actually. Walking in the main gate, you can see it in the background. It's at the top of that hill, I believe. But there's actually a walkway that my guide pointed out to me from this temple to the other temple, which is a couple of miles away, and it unites these two in this long walkway. So I'm not going to go into detail about the temples. There's just too much history here and too much information. You can find that out for yourself, but just know they are magnificent, they are awe-inspiring, and they are huge. My guide explained to me that in those days, the common people were allowed to come only into the central courtyard, and only the king was allowed into the Holy of Holies, which is an anterior room where the priest resides. I learned that the hieroglyphic carvings and depictions of gods and kings on the walls and on the columns provide certainty of the perpetuation of life for the king, and that the mural decorations magically ensure the performance of important ceremonies and reinforce the memory of royal deeds. There are pictures of the king in many temples I saw, with Isis on one side and Osiris on the other, which depicts the king as being a descendant of the gods. Other carvings show the king defeating his enemies and other ceremonial rites. I also learned that in the statues of the king or the nobles, those shown with their hands crossed across their chest means they are deceased, and with their hands at their sides and in a stride position, it means they're alive. So whenever these were done, it was according to the whether they were living or deceased. In the temple of Karnak, or Thebes, as it was originally called, my one lasting memory from here is the large carving of what looks like modern medical equipment. I wish I had a slide of this because it is truly remarkable, but you can look it up. There were syringes, forceps, scalpels, etc. on this relief. And this is credited to Imhotep, who was a physician. He was also a chancellor of the Pharaoh Djoser. So, interesting. Modern medical equipment. I know that there are other things that probably you know of that defy the age of the monuments, but there were things happening in those days that we still don't quite understand. Then to the temple of Hatshepsut, that's a mouthful, which is a mortuary temple, and I think it is one of those slides. Let's see if we can find it. Not that one. Oh, that's all? Okay. Well, we'll stay with the Sphinx because we're going to get there eventually. I don't have a picture of her temple, but it's massive. This was a woman pharaoh by that name, and she was in the 18th dynasty. There were many dynasties in Egypt. It's located across the city of Luxor, and it is considered to be a masterpiece of ancient architecture. Her tomb is located here. So next stop along the route included the temple of Edfu and Kom Ombo temple, where 300 crocodile mummies were discovered and now housed in a museum next door. That's pretty interesting stuff. And they're big too. They're not little baby crocodiles, they're big crocodiles. So last stop was the Aswan, where the famous Aswan Dam is located, and where the ancient Philae temple was underwater until it was dismantled and moved in 1970 to higher ground above the dam. I traveled back to Cairo by train and prepared for the next part of my journey, which was the main reason for coming to Egypt, halfway around the world. So back to Matthias and this planned event. As I told you, I had very little information about what was going to happen or what my part was before deciding to come and participate. The information I got prior to coming to Egypt was that I was assigned a geographical location called Lake Baikal in Siberia, and that I was to learn as much about the area as I could, the people, the land, the culture, as well as information about the lake. So I did some research and I found out a little about the place, which is to say it's way out in the middle of nowhere, and it is the world's largest freshwater lake by volume, containing about 1/5 of the fresh water on the Earth's surface. It is 5,315 feet deep. That's pretty deep. Into Lake Baikal flows more than 330 rivers and streams. So think on that. Water. 1/5 of the fresh water on the planet in this one area. So I was willing to let things unfold for me as they would. I just knew instinctively that it was my part of my life journey and something I had to do. So here's what I learned. The event venue was set up at a resort which sits directly at the base of the Great Pyramid. And when I came in and sat down with all of these other folks that were also part of the deal, this planned event, and the pyramid was directly in sight. We were up so close to it. This resort is like a golf resort, and it sits just at the base of the Great Pyramid. I heard it humming, and I asked people around me, "Do you hear it?" Some people just looked at me like, no. But I could hear it. I could hear it. It was a low, well, anyway, it doesn't matter. I just heard the sound. So there were going to be 12 times 12 active participants for this project, or 1,440 people. We were divided into groups of 33 each with one group leader. We were going to meet each day on the grounds and have interactive activities, a meal, and then in the afternoon there was a talk by Matthias, which was followed by meditation and some evenings with music and dance. The purpose of this project was this: to bring balance and repair the network to the planet. And by network, you may have heard the word grid, energetic grid, or matrix. It's the same, which connects all life on Earth. And we know from sacred geometry that all forms start with numbers, just as buildings do in the physical. So we start this form building utilizing the numbers, such as the overall group comprising 1,440, 12 groups of 12, broken down into smaller groups of 33, and the participants were organized into 4 components of the planet, which are earth, air, fire, and water. I know this is confusing, but I'll do my best to explain. Each member of the group of 33 had a particular task of being a placeholder for a specific geographical location. I was given Lake Baikal in Siberia, and all my teammates had a different location. So then each of the 4 elements of the planet, there was a Lake Baikal within the air group, the water, the earth, and the fire group. So our job was to go into the king's chamber at just after sunset until sunrise in groups of 33, and for a period of about an hour, we were led in meditation by Matthias, who would open a portal, allow the energies of each group to be in service to restore the magnetic network around the earth. The network carries information, data from the universe to the earth and back. I know this sounds way out there, but here's some information. There are around the earth what are called ley lines. These ley lines are lines that crisscross the globe like latitudes and longitudes that are dotted with monuments and natural landforms. They carry along with them rivers of energy. Along these lines, at places that intersect called nodes, there are pockets of concentrated energy. They can be harnessed by certain individuals. We, the participants, were embodying the energy of those nodes by the various geographical locations we were assigned to. These lines were discovered in 1921 by an amateur archaeologist, Alfred Watkins, and I probably won't go into the rest of it, but just suffice to say that seemingly there are straight lines that can be drawn from one monument to the next. In other words, there's a straight line from the tip of Ireland all the way to Israel, and along the route there are different landforms that bear the name Michael, or some form of it. Also, there are often churches and children's playgrounds located at these intersections. And as for the supernatural component, the ley lines mystery deepens when it's revealed that what they connect. Along the lines lie the Great Pyramids of Giza, Chichen Itza, and Stonehenge, all wonders of the world that continue to surprise archaeologists today. And so, when I was a young girl, about 12 years old, my teacher gave us, the class, an assignment to construct or draw a historical structure. And although she never told us about this place, I chose Stonehenge as the one I wanted to depict. Curious. I didn't know anything about Stonehenge, but there was a connection there somehow. Anyway, so the task that Matthias was orchestrating was using each of us to hold this vibrational frequency of these different nodes or ley line intersections in concert while he opened a portal in the Great Pyramid which, according to Matthias, was the magnetic north 12,000 years ago. So I looked at it kind of like a magnetic tune-up for the Earth. When it was time for my group to go into the pyramid, I was reluctant to go inside. I'm very claustrophobic. But luckily, I had a wonderful partner who held my hand and guided me up to that steep incline. When I got to the king's chamber, and I have some notes here I'm going to read from my journal, I struggled to go up the walkway. It's very close, and I'm really scared of closed-in spaces. AJ holds my hand, and I make it in, sitting down on the stone floor. Matthias starts to guide us on this activation journey. I am Lake Baikal in Siberia. I am holding that node in my consciousness in order to set my place and part in this great work. We are the fire group, and we will be setting the spark to move the energy and intention around the entire planet. Matthias runs out, and he runs back in. He thumps his chest, and soon his voice is not his own, but someone else. He sounds Oriental, Chinese maybe. Matthias is channeling a being not in this dimension. This other is thanking us for doing the work at this place and time. The energy in the room is extreme, and I feel my body swaying. We are breathing deep and then chanting in unison. I see clearly the tetrahedron right here in blue. And as the energy increases and the visions are intense, I look up and I see in my mind's eye the top of the pyramid open and the vast night sky beyond. We come down, we're at the bottom of the pyramid after the activation, and I can hardly stand. My legs feel like jello. This continued for 3 days, with each group taking their turn inside the Great Pyramid, and each time with Matthias opening a portal for the flow of energy to do the work we came to do. I did hear from other groups who had a different experience from ours, which were not all peaceful and light as ours was. These sessions, I think, were different according to whom he was channeling, the intentions and energetic qualities of the group members. On the next to the last day, there was a concert held on the grounds of the Sphinx, and you can see it here. It is enormous. While we were standing there, I think our body size may have come up to about half of the size of what are considered the feet out there in the front. So you're really tiny next to this monument. The sun was setting and the sky was deep blue above and red-orange below. And as the music was playing and the Sphinx and pyramids were in the background, there appeared in the sky 12 dots of light hovering in a straight line on the side of the pyramid. They were 3 groups of 4, and a huge arc of light energy above the stage. They held their position there until they disappeared. We came back to the Sphinx in the morning at 5:30 before the place opened to the public, and it was wonderful to stand right next to Matthias, who was talking. And I have some notes from my journal. The Sphinx, the following morning, in the dark and cold, we walked around it, and also to the center between the paws. Matthias spoke and told us 12,000 years ago, people came to honor the age of Leo, the lion, which was the protector of the people. A group of people built a structure in front of the Sphinx in which to gather and honor the lion. Today, more than 2,000 of us are here, returning in the new age of Aquarius. We have returned to rejoin and honor it after all these years. So now, Aquarius is rising and Leo is setting. We, the 2,000, made a promise to return and perform this task to receive the information held by the great lion all these eons of time back into our bodies. The lion, guardian of the information through the I Am, has been reminding us of this planetary information. In Atlantean times, information was kept in water. In those times, just a little nudge would set the vibration in motion and set out the intention. At this point, he asked us to hum softly, and we began receiving the information into our bodies by our blood, and we give thanks for the information. And one of the things that Matthias told us on our first day with him, that it always rains on the very first day of the event, any event he's ever held. Every time. And so it did in Egypt, where their annual rainfall is 4 inches per year. It rained hard, and the wind came up, so we had air and we had water. So after I returned home, it took me a long while to process everything I had seen and experienced. I know it was part of my plan, as Spirit has told me in the past. If it is yours to do, it is easy. And it was. Everything I had planned fell right into place. The only thing I found challenging was the food. Egyptian diet is mostly meat and bread. So anyway, it was just a trivial thing. I don't pretend to know what it all means, but I do know this. I will remain open to what is mine to do in service to humanity, for I know this is my highest and most cherished calling, and I am grateful for it. Thank you for your time. Namaste.